Oh, hey, how you doing? Hey, I am so glad that you're here. I was just getting in a little bit of reading and stuff. You know, I love stories. Stories are amazing. They're wonderful things because you can do so much with a story. All right, you can sit there and you could create a thriller where you think, oh my gosh, is the guy going to escape or is she going to escape? Or maybe the story might be a love story. Oh, she's so wonderful, he's so wonderful. And there's so many different ways that you can create a story. In fact, as you can see, there are so many different stories out there. But when we think about a story, I think it's important that we look at and realize that there is one great story. All right, and this story actually includes a lot of those types of stories. All right, it includes thrillers, it includes suspense, it includes love, it includes all these different types of stories. And the story that I'm talking about is the Bible. Now, this Bible is a collection of stories, 72 in fact. All right, it's a collection of stories. And these stories tell a bigger story. But where did they come from? Well, basically there's these guys that sat down and they started writing each one of these stories. Now, that would be fine in itself, but then everybody would sit there and say, well, George, he wrote this. Why should I believe George when he says this? You see, what we believe is that even though these stories are written by man, by human beings, that God is the real author of this story. Now, it's not that God sat there and said, okay, I want you to write this word, this word, this word, this word, this word, this word. He didn't dictate this book. What God did, and I guess the best example I can give you is this. Have you ever read or written a love letter? All right? When you go to put those words down, you're very particular on what you want to say and what you're trying to write. And so what happens is you have all these feelings, all these emotions, you have all these ideas going around in your heart about that person you love. And then you've got to figure out what words best translate that truth. So if your boyfriend or girlfriend loves trains and you're writing a love letter to them, you will find ways of connecting trains to that love story. Well, it's the same way here, that God stirred in these authors' hearts what he was trying to say, and he allowed them to use their words to convey his truth. And so this book is actually authored by God, by working with his sons and daughters in sharing the story of his plan for mankind. So you're probably wondering, why did God write this? Why did he put all these books together? Well, it goes back to what I talked about earlier about when you're writing a love letter to someone, that this is God's love letter to you and I. He wants us to know who he is. He wants us to know what kind of a relationship he wants with us. He wants us to know that he's been involved with us throughout our entire history. That he has a plan for us and him. And so in here, God shares about how he's love. He shares about how he's never going to give up on you. He shares in here about how he's willing to forgive us and to give us the strength to start again. And in here, he constantly reveals to us that his deepest desire is to be in a loving relationship with you and I. But here's the other side of it. You see, God shared this with us, all right? And he didn't mean it to be something that just simply was a nice collection of stories. He meant it to help us to enter into a real relationship with him. We call this the Living Bible because it's alive. The words that are written here speak life into your life and my life. And this isn't just a book. about God's story. This is our story too. Because as you read through it, you'll discover that God is involved in man's history throughout all time. He created Adam and Eve. He breathed his life into them. He told Moses, get the people out of slavery. I want to take care of them. Led them through the desert, brought them to the promised land. Spoke to Peter, Paul, James, John, the apostles. He himself said, you know what? I want to be closer to you than you can imagine, so I'm going to become like you. And so he took on flesh. He became man, just like us. So guys, this is something that's important to understand. This isn't just the church's Bible. This isn't just the church's story. It's not just a story about God. This is our story. And the story is being written through the lives of humanity to this day. So that means that the story is being written through our lives, through each and every one of us. You see, God is not only telling you how much he loves you, not only is he telling me how much he loves me, but he's inviting you and me to continue his story. He wants other people to encounter his love through you, through me. He wants other people to know who he is and what his plan is for them. And so he's inviting you and I to help unfold his plan in the world. And it's a choice that each one of us can make. It's up to us to choose if we want to help him in bringing his love and his truth and his joy and his wonder to all of mankind. And so God is inviting us to take our story and to bring other people into the story, into his plan for mankind. You know, it says in Scripture, it says that God desires all men to be with him. That God desires everybody to be a part of his plan, to be a part of the great story. And he's asking us to help him with that. Just as he asked the apostles, Moses, David, all the other people before us. And he's asking us to take a part in that. And so you and I have a very important role to play in God's story, in God's plan for mankind. And he's asking each of us to participate. You know, as I mentioned, this is our story. And the thing is the only way that it becomes our story is if you and I decide to encounter God, to enter into the story. Each one of us has a choice to make. I can either embrace the story that God is sharing with me and make it a part of my life, live according to what he speaks into my life, as I read the different scriptures and things that God is speaking to me. And he's saying, Bart, 1, are you listening? 2, are you going to do anything about it? So each one of us has a choice to make. Is this going to be our story? Or am I going to be an obstacle to God's story with mankind to continue on? Because St. Jerome says it really clear. Ignorance of Scripture is ignorance of God. I cannot truly have a relationship with God without diving into his word, allowing him to speak to me through this book, to speak to my heart, to call me to greatness, to challenge me to be the best son I could be. And for you, the best son or daughter you can be. And so guys, we have to make a choice. Is the greatest story, is our greatest story going to be a living, active part of our lives? God is never going to force this book on you. He says, here, I offer it to you so that you can come to know me. I wish and I hope that you will pick it up and allow me to speak to you.